We don't feel the coils of the snake going around us now, and we find ourselves throttled, if we're to be honest, to the point where it's now this serpent, this snake, has wrapped its coils around the whole world, and we feel throttled to the point that we are being choked to death with fear and a very uncertain future. And the serpent is indeed about to bite. And tyranny is looking like the order of the day at the end of this program coming in. But what on earth are we going to do about it? Well, there's that. You see, they shall lift up serpents and they shall not bite them. Devilish influences and situations you might find yourself either by a real serpent or a situation where you find yourself in a situation where you're about to be bitten by a serpent and his poison might go into you. You see the symbolic sense of that verse there. And another, it goes on to say they should take up serpents and they shall not bite them. And if they drink any deadly thing, it will not harm them. You think, well, what do I get put into a situation where I can't keep my job? I can't get my money. I can't pay my dozens of bills. And let's face it, there are dozens these days, where in the old days there were few. And you think, well, you can say, don't take this dreaded substance into your body. But if I don't, then I'm faced with a situation where I won't be able to pay my bills. So I'm in a situation where I have to choose between evil and evil. He'll be pretty evil living on the street and surviving there. I'd probably die anyway, because personally I'm an older man and I've got asthma and all kinds of things like this. And how would I survive on a damp night living on the street? How would I get money? There won't be money in those days. So we have all of these fears in our mind and hearts, but it does say, you think to yourself, well, I haven't really, if I'm going to be honest, I wouldn't have the faith to pick up a serpent and he wouldn't bite me. I should have the faith to pick up a serpent and he wouldn't bite me, because Jesus said when he leaves this world, I go, he says, back to the Father, and all the miracles that he did, you will do greater miracles than these. Now, if we're going to be honest, do we see these great miracles like as we read about in the Bible? Now, that might sound doubtful, but the reason really, when you look back, they had this great faith is that largely, I guess, really, their whole lives depended upon it. Well, one aspect of having the great faith is that you do find your whole life depends upon your faith spiritually. In that, now you think, oh, that's your cop out. You can just say you've got these spiritual realities, but we can't touch them, we can't see them, and you can't prove them to us. And you can say you're getting all these dreams, prophecies, and revelations, but everybody says they get these. And again, we can't prove them. But there is one thing you can most definitely, in this same sense, prove. And that is if you've asked, or if you ask Jesus Christ into your heart, you will indeed sense a spiritual reality and a spiritual connection to Jesus Christ. And from then onwards, you will sense the presence of Jesus in various situations in your life, or you will sense the presence of Jesus leaving you in various situations in your life. If you go the right way, then the Spirit of Jesus and the Spirit of God will come down upon you or in you, because the Spirit of Jesus in you is like a well. Jesus said, like a well has you go if you lower a bucket into a well where there's an underwater stream. Well, if you've got Jesus in your heart, you have this underwater stream in your heart, and you, in this same sense, lower down your, let's say, spiritual bucket, and you draw upon the waters, which Jesus said, the waters that I give shall be in there, in us, right, in them, and springing up into everlasting life. Now, if you're one of those people who not only lives on physical water, but you also need spiritual water, well, you ask Jesus into your heart. In this sense, your heart becomes like a well, and with this underwater, this deep downstream. And then you have the everlasting life of the waters of life springing up within you. And you find you can't live without the waters of life, which puts you at odds with this world. Now, seems you can't live without this water of life. You then find if you're in God's will, going God's way, well, this water is readily available to you. But if you're not going God's way, then these waters dry up. So as long as you're going God's way, then you'll be in God's spirit. But if you don't go God's way, then the waters will, in this same sense, dry up, in that God will leave you. Now, why did the your average saint or prophet die for his faith? It's because he knew he couldn't live without the waters of life. We can't live without water. You'll die of thirst without physical water, and you'll die of thirst without spiritual water. So, a good detection of God's will and God's course and the course for your life would be on a more personal and specific level that in this situation where you're going the wrong way, God will leave you. The spiritual presence of God will leave you. And if you go the right way and do the right thing, then the spiritual presence of God will draw nigh to you. So one way of finding the will of God is to draw nigh to God, and he will draw nigh to you. Well, you can only draw nigh to God if you do the right thing in life, and therefore God will approve of the decisions you're making, and therefore you'll be going God's way instead of the prince of the power of the air's way. The prince of the power of the air's way is that if you do everything wrong, then in this same sense, you will be drawing nigh to him and he will be drawing nigh to you. But in the other sense, if you do everything wrong, you're becoming spiritually dead. Spiritual death. You will slowly, if not quickly, become a living zombie without the spiritual presence of God in your life. Now, this is what your average prophet and saint feared the most. And that was and still is to this day, and still can be discovered to this day, that if you go God's way, then you have spiritual life. Jesus said, I am come that they might have life and that they might have it more abundantly. So through God's Spirit, you have more life. You have the spiritual presence and spiritual love. And this wow in your heart, this underground stream that you draw upon, Jesus saying to the woman at the well, the waters that I give shall be in him a well of water springing up into everlasting life, and you will never thirst again. Well, you'll never thirst again on a level whereby you're drawing your waters now from God's well and not the worldly well of this world. You drink from the waters of this world, and you will still die. You will die of thirst spiritually. You could find yourselves, if ever you could, that is, satisfied physically, but you won't be satisfied spiritually. And some of us can't live without the spiritual side of life. That spiritual side of life being that in thy presence is fullness of joy. At thy right hand are pleasures forevermore. And this is how all of the saints operated, in that as long as they were going God's way, they would sense a presence of God in that situation. If they found themselves going the wrong way or being directed by another taking them the wrong way, or deceiving them or tricking them going to go the wrong way, and with the wrong people, to go God's way, you'll be in the right with the right people in the right place, doing the right thing by God. If you're going the wrong way, then you'll be in the wrong boat with the wrong people, and doing all the wrong things via the devil, the prince of the power of the air that directs the course of this world. Now, this is what your average, real average saint and prophet fears: losing the presence of God in his life and not having the waters of life in his life, and therefore dying of thirst, becoming a spiritual dead, an empty vessel, or even a zombie or a living corpse. Now you find out about being a zombie or a living corpse, or the endless aching void of the heart that you really just can't stand. Is when many people have, before they come to Jesus, sense this great emptiness in their lives, and therefore they've asked Jesus, cried out to Jesus with all their heart. Now you shall seek me and find me, it says, when you shall search for me with all your heart. So when we reach the end of our rope, then we cry out to God with all of our hearts. And then you shall seek me and find me when you shall search for me with all of your heart. Now, within these various situations you get in, you do indeed find yourselves searching, seeking and searching for Jesus with all of your heart. Now, and then you find Jesus, then you find there is a spiritual side of life, and you have Jesus in your heart. And then you find that whatever you do, you'll find that his presence will either go with you or it won't go with you if you do the wrong thing. Now, this helps you survive, because you then know if you're in the right place at the right time with the right people and doing the wrong thing, doing the right thing, or if you're in the wrong place with the wrong people and doing the wrong thing, then God will leave you. God will not in any way at all ever compromise with evil. So in this way, God can help you direct the course of your life by trusting your spiritual senses by God, and walking in God's spirit. Or if you find yourself not walking in God's spirit, then you sense spiritually that there's something wrong, and you're quite rapidly becoming a zombie, a spiritual death, or a living corpse that merely breathes and functions, and your heart turns into an aching void or a bottomless pit, and you really can't feel that aching void in your heart. It's like a bottomless pit that can't be filled. It feels so empty that it becomes even agonizing to live without God. Now, this is the dilemma of the your saint and prophet. And people wonder, well, why on earth did you die for your faith? Because they couldn't live without the spiritual presence of Jesus in their lives. And they couldn't live without the waters of life, just like you and I can't live without water. We can only go barely a few days to a week or so, they say, without water. Well, that's the same for those who need God's spiritual life and air in their lives, and the spiritual waters of life to drink every day. Well, such was the case with Saint Paul. And he had another, Moses was the same, talking along, for wherein shall it be known here that I and thy people have found grace in thy sight? Well, how do you know that Moses found grace in God's sight? Is it not in that thou goest with us? So shall we be separated from all of the people that dwell upon the face of the earth. This is what separates the saint and the prophet, the Christian, from the world, in that he can't live without God. And therefore, like in the days of Moses had a more visible manifestation of God, in that they had the cloud by day and the fire by night to follow. But Moses taking his orders from God on a more spiritual level, though there was also a physical level. And Moses saying to God, for wherein shall it be known here that I and thy people have found grace in thy sight? Is it not, and that thou goest with us? Now, if you're with a person that, God willing, is going God's way, then you sense you are on God's course. You are on God's ship, and your destination is sure. And then you too will learn to walk in God's spirit, sense his spiritual presence in various situations, and should God leave you, and then you will find you're in the right boat. But this doesn't, being in the right boat with God doesn't always entail waters that aren't stormy. In the world, Jesus said, "Ye shall have tribulation, but be of good cheer, for I have overcome the world." Now, here's Paul, and another good thing, if it could ever happen to us, and God willing it will. Like I say, if you're put into a situation where suddenly these verses become more a possibility of a solution that you never really, maybe so many verses in the Bible we hopped over in the past. But we do find ourselves in a situation where we might have to drink a deadly thing. That's not to say you will have to, but the thing is, you've got a situation there where you've got to choose between evil and evil. The evil being that you have to drink or take into your body a potentially deadly thing. Well, that verse promises, Jesus said, if they shall, they shall take up serpents and they won't bite them. And if they drink any deadly thing, it shall not harm them. Well, in the Old Testament, in Elisha, they drank a deadly thing there. There was a famine in the land, so they went and gathered whatever food they could find. And someone came back with an armful of poisonous thistles, and he threw them into the pot. He got so many of these thistles, thinking they were good to eat, that he threw them into the pot. Now, when the stew, let's say, was cooked with all these various things in it, including this poison that could potentially kill them. Now, they obviously didn't the person didn't deliberately go out and gather these thistles and throw them into the pot in order to kill people, but they obviously found themselves in a situation they were starving. There was no food to eat, there was a famine, so they gathered what they could and threw it all into the pot. And they, oh, good, let's have this lovely stew that we've gone to this trouble to make. And how knows they're going to get food tomorrow, but we've got food today. Well, let's eat up because there's a famine in the land and we could starve to death. And great, we've got this stew and whatever we've got left. And then one person tastes it and says, "Good master," to Elisha, there's poison, there's death in the stew. And so there you are. You've got a situation where if they drink any deadly thing, it won't harm them. Now, we need the food. We're going to die. There's nothing to eat. There's a famine. We've just gathered all what we've got, what we could find, thrown into the stew. And this idiot went and threw in this bloody poison. Now we're all going to die. So what does Elisha do? He prays, of course, and this is exactly what he did. He sprinkled in some flour into the stew. Well, there's your faith. This faith is in the bread, really the flour being like Jesus. And he then tells them to drink this said deadly thing, and it won't harm them. Now, I'm not saying that's a potential, a possibility of a solution. You do wonder. Is it so that I'm going to find myself in a situation where I should drink this deadly thing? Well, some would say, never. Well, what if they were going to take your child away from you if you don't drink it? What if they were going to take your child away if you don't have him take this substance into your body or his body? What are you going to do then? Well, would it not be so that you're over a barrel and you have to drink a deadly thing? And Jesus saying it won't harm them. Now, I'm not saying that has ever happened to me before, but we're in a situation where you're starting to scratch around, even, let's say, for solutions. What on earth am I going to do? As much as we've all had miracles in our past on a spiritual level, they shall lay hands on the sick, it says, and they shall recover. So what if you know someone who's taken this? They thought it was a great idea. It was just normal, like there's always been this around. I mean, I don't even talk about it on here because they just take it off. If AI detect certain words, then in the past they've had stuff taken down here. They could very well take it down in the future. So I'm not only talking to whoever, very few would be listening, but also to AI. We have to remember the image of the beast system coming in is already manifest on here, in that if certain words come up, then AI will take you down. So you can't say certain things now because they're not politically correct, hence the gain the dictatorship. Well, if they shall take up serpents, if they drink any deadly thing, it shall not hurt them. There's one option. Another option is to learn to walk in God's Spirit and to sense God's spiritual presence in your various situations. And if God's going with you, now this can be instantaneous, or it can take some time. Having searched out a situation, you find God is not in it, and other times you find that it's pretty instantaneous. If you get involved with this person or that person, then pretty quickly the Spirit of God leaves you, and therefore you know God is not in that situation. He doesn't wish for you to be with this person because it's not good for you spiritually. God can't even help them spiritually because their eyes are already shut. They've already had their chances and rejected God. So God's saying, come out from among them and be ye separate. Now, if you don't come out from among them and be ye separate, you choose to continue to hang around with them, you will very quickly become a living zombie. You'll become spiritual death. Your heart will become a chasm and an aching void, and you could just as well be floating off into outer space with no direction and no certain place where you will end up. There's an endless void of space, and there's an endless void of space in your heart. And you would quickly become a zombie. And should you even speak to someone where you'd be better off foaming at the mouth and blowing bubbles, your words will mean nothing, absolutely nothing without God. And so you feel, you know, in fact, that you have to get away from this living dead zombie, lest you become one too. Now, here's Paul, right, and he's going to go to Jerusalem, and he's going to be rejected of the Jews in Jerusalem. But here's another option for survival in the future, and that is prophecy, but not pretend prophecy. You remember now, you don't want some pretend prophecy from some pretend saint, because this isn't going to wash or work for you, because it's false and fake. You're looking for the future by God, and you can, and so that you know you can survive. And if God has told you what the future is for your life, then you know your destination is set, God willing, as long as you do and play your part in what God wants you to do. So Paul was approached by a prophet in Acts 21, verse 10. And as we tarried there many days, wherever he was tarrying, there came down from Judea a certain prophet named Agabus. And when he was come unto us, he took Paul's girdle and bound his own hands. So he took Paul's belt, let's say, bound his own hands and feet, and said, Thus saith the Holy Ghost, so shall the Jews at Jerusalem bind the man that owneth this girdle. The one who owned the belt girdle, right, was Paul. And he's now prophesying that he's going to Jerusalem. The Jews are going to, so shall the Jews at Jerusalem bind the man that owneth this girdle, and shall deliver him into the hands of the Gentiles. Well, sure enough, this happened. Paul did go to Jerusalem. The Jews arrested him and bound him and handed him over to the Romans for trial. Would have tried him themselves, but the point of them trying him himself was so that they could even kill him. 40 Jews even vowing to not even eat until they'd killed Paul. So Paul was very much in a situation where indeed this prophecy come true, but not to the end that he was going to die. Because later on in this situation where the Jews arrested him, they stirred up, just like with Jesus, they stirred up a lot of riots and persecution for Paul going into the temple to preach the gospel. And they stirring up the mob, and the mob turning on Paul and then arresting Paul to put him to trial in order to kill him. So 40 Jews even vowing never to eat again until they've killed Paul. So very much, again, you see a life and death situation for Paul. And ye shall seek me and find me when ye shall search for me with all of your heart. Now, when you get into these situations where indeed there's no other way out, well, he's been arrested. He's been put in chains via the Jews. The whole town is turned against him. How is he going to get those chains off of his hands? How is he going to escape that mob? Well, in this situation, God gave him wisdom. The Jews wanted to try him And to get the right, because obviously they wanted to kill him, would have meant they'd have to do it through Roman law. So they were hoping to manipulate the Roman government in order to allow them to kill Paul, and by law, much the same as they did for Jesus. Well, Paul, very wisely, God gave him wisdom in this situation, so telling them that he's a Roman citizen. And so the Jews couldn't try him, and he wanted to be tried in Rome via Caesar. Therefore, through God's wisdom, another thing from God, God willing, Jesus saying, when they shall deliver you up, think not what things ye shall say. For when this happens, at the time it happens, if they deliver you up right into chains, much like Paul did, God will give you a wisdom, give you the words to speak, and not to even premeditate in your heart what things ye shall say, for it is the voice of the Spirit, your Father, speaking in you and through you in these various situations. So by God's grace and by God's Spirit and inspired wisdom, he saw a way out of the situation where they wanted him down into Jerusalem, where the Jews could try him because they would find him guilty of death and would have killed him. But God, by the grace of God giving him great wisdom, and he's declaring, "Look, I'm a Roman citizen. I wish to be tried by Caesar, tried in Rome by Caesar." So he escaped that one, but the course of game was set for Paul, because obviously Paul here is in great troubles, great tribulation. He's in danger of his life. So seeing he's in danger of his life, he's crying out for absolute miracles from God. So God's saying to him here in Acts 23:11, and the night followed, the Lord stood by him, right? So he's under arrest. It isn't looking good. The Jews want to try him and kill him. And he's appealed to go to Rome to be tried there. And now he gets his answer from the spiritual dimension via Jesus himself. And Jesus saying to him, "Be of good cheer, Paul, for as thou hast testified me in Jerusalem," right? So he testified of Jerusalem as prophesied. They would put his arms and legs in chains, the belt going round the hand and the legs, symbolic that he would be arrested, handed over to the Gentiles, being the Romans, right? Now Jesus reassuring him, right, "Be of good cheer, Paul, for as thou hast testified of me in Jerusalem, so must thou bear witness also at Rome." So it was decided already by Jesus that he was going to be tried in Rome. And so the Gentiles, now in the hands of the Gentiles, the Romans, they taking him to Rome. But again, even so, it wasn't an easy course for St. Paul, because it was still going to be a life-threatening situation. Now, this really is where a lot of their miracles came out of, in that Paul frequently finding himself in life-threatening situations. So crying out to God with all of his heart, "Ye shall seek me and find me when ye shall search for me with all of your heart." So, and when it was determined that he should sail to Italy, all being said, he finally is told, it's all decided, he's going into Italy. They delivered Paul, and when it was determined that we should sail into Italy, they delivered Paul and certain other prisoners unto one named Julius, a centurion of Augustus's band. And entering into the ship of Adramyttium, we launched, meaning to sail by the coast of Asia. One Aristarchus, a Macedonian of Thessalonica, being with us. So he's in this ship, he's bound in chains, as prophesied, and he's in the hands of the Gentiles, in the hands of the Romans, right? And now he's a prisoner with other prisoners, no doubt murderers and who knows what these prisoners have done, robbers and thieves and whatever. Now Paul is classified as a prisoner, and he's going to be tried for daring to preach that Jesus Christ died and rose again. This being his crime, and apparently turning upside down the Jewish faith. So, and the next day we touched at Sidon. So he's in this ship. The next day he touches at Sidon. And Julius courteously entreated Paul and gave him liberty to go unto his friends and to refresh himself. So I guess that he was at port there. And Julius, whoever he was, said he could go and see his friends that he must have known in that town. And when we had launched from thence, so he eventually, of course, launches from thence, we sailed under Cyprus because the winds were contrary. Okay, they stop off at Cyprus. And when we had sailed over the sea of Cilicia and Pamphylia, we came to Myra, a city of Lycia. So many stop-offs on this ship. And Paul stopping off now at Lycia. He stopped off at Cyprus. And there the centurion found a ship of Alexandria, right? He's on his way to Italy. And jumping in and out of various ships to get there. And he put us there in. So he gets in this ship. And there the centurion found a ship of Alexandria and sailing into Italy and put us therein. And when we had sailed slowly many days and scarce were come over against Cnidus, the wind not suffering us, we sailed under Crete over against Salmon. And hardly passing it, so he passes Crete over against Salmon, and hardly passing it came unto a place which is called the Fair Havens, nigh whereunto was the city of Lacia. Now, when much time was spent, and when sailing was now dangerous, because the fast, right, was now already past, Paul admonished them, whenever that was a certain time period where they had a fast, there must have been a time period where they had this fast, or was now already past. Paul admonished them and said unto them, Sirs, I perceive that this voyage will be with her. Right, so he's getting messages from God telling him that this voyage is going to be with her. Now the course they're on is God's course, but Paul being directed by God to tell them that it's not wise to follow this course at this present time, if ever they should. But of course, Paul, knowing that he has a prophecy that he's going to indeed go to Rome, and said unto them, Sirs, I perceive that this voyage will be with her, and much damage, not only of the lading and ship, but also of our lives. So he's got a prophecy again from God that the ship is in danger, and it's not the danger again for our lives. So there you have a situation where his life is yet again at stake. So all of these various situations where it looks like certain death is facing you face to face with death, and so Paul frequently crying out to God from the very depths of his heart to find solutions miraculous for these physical world situations. Nevertheless, the centurion, on believing the master and the owner of the ship, right, no doubt it's money, more than those things which were spoken by Paul. Now, Paul, speaking spiritually, he's got a message from God, no doubt, telling him that the ship is in danger, and all of their lives on that ship are in danger. The advice there would have been, let's wait, because there's a storm coming. Now, this is interesting here, because there's a storm coming, and the owner of the ship doesn't go along with Paul's counsel. He doesn't, obviously not such a spiritual man. The natural man receiveth not the things of the Spirit of God, for they are foolishness unto him. Neither can he know them, for they are spiritually discerned. Well, Paul, using his spiritual discernment, and God telling him the ship is going to be in peril. The ship itself is going to be in peril, and the lives of the people on that ship are going to be in danger. They're all going to potentially die if they don't listen to Paul, but they're not going to listen to Paul, are they? And because the haven was not commodious to winter in, right, it's not a good place to port in winter, the more part advised, depart thence also, right? So the expert, if by any means they might attain to Venice, and there to winter, which is an haven of Crete. and life toward the southwest and northwest. So, I mean, getting from A to B there in those days, it looks like it's going to take months. And all along, Paul's on these various ships. He's advising them, don't sail because we're headed for danger. The experts and the owner of the ship, the owner of your country and the experts here, the scientists and such, no, we'll stay on the course we're on. Paul warning them, your lives are in danger if we stay on the course we're on. They're not going to listen to God's spiritual advisory here, being St. Paul. So, and when the south wind blew softly, there, look, it's blowing softly, supposing that they had obtained their purpose, loosing thence, they sailed close by Crete. Now, the wind blowing softly, the calm, the proverbial calm before the storm. The calm before the storm, no, that's never going to happen. But yes, God said it's going to happen, so God knows the future, and therefore it is going to happen. The storm clouds are rolling in, and the course we're on, the ship we're on, says Paul, against all the advice of the experts, they not listening to him, and the owner of the ship not listening to him. And look, they're saying, there's calm out there. Storm? What storm? And when the south wind blew softly, supposing they had obtained their purpose, loosing thence they sailed quite close by Crete. But not long after there arose against it a tempestuous wind called Euroclydon. It must have been a familiar story. They even knew the name of this wind, and they called it was called Euroclydon. And when the ship was caught and could not bear up into the wind, we let her drive. So they just let the course of the wind drive this ship. They've got on a ship that they can't get off of now, and they're now at the mercy of the course of this world, being the weather here and this tempestuous wind that's now blowing this ship, and they can't do a thing about it. They got into a boat they can't get out of. And you kind of see the symbolics here, like the New World Order. And they've got into a ship that they can't get out of. And we're all sailing into a storm. So against all of the spiritual advisories and prophets and saints, they're staying on the same course. And we're all now in a ship that we can't get out or off of. And the storm clouds are rolling in. There is indeed a tempestuous wind rolling in called Euroclydon. And when the ship was caught, it could not bear up into the wind. We let her drive. Let the wind take us. We can't fight this. The world is saying we're going to have to go with it. So they're going with this evil sounding named wind called Euroclydon. It's tempestuous, and it's no use trying to sail into it. You will have to go with it. So the world is now in this ship. It's the biggest gamble ever for the world. And they've gotten the world on board with these programs. And there's nothing anyone can now do about it. Everyone's stuck on this ship. And Paul is stuck on this ship. And when the ship was caught and could not bear up into the wind, we let her drive. And running under a certain island, which is called Clauda, we had much work to come by the boat. So everything's haphazard on the boat. Much work to come by the boat. You picture everything moving around and then tossed about and everything, sails to get down or let up and everything else, everything in chaos. Which when they had taken up, they used helps undergirding the ship, and fearing lest they should, tying everything down, I guess, and when they fall into the quicksand, sail, and so were driven. So they're stuck in this ship, can't get out. The storms are blowing them. Everything's moving around on deck. They have to tie it down. And we being exceedingly tossed with a tempest, the next day they lightened the ship, so chucking all the cargo overboard as much as they could. And the third day we cast out with our own hands the tackling of the ship. If we don't cast this tackling out, we're going to all drown and die. The ship's going to sink. So they tackle this stuff overboard to lighten the ship. And when neither sun nor stars in many days appeared, so they look up to the sky, they can't see the sun or stars, these storm clouds are rolling in. And when neither sun nor stars in many days appeared, and no small tempest lay on us, it was an evil tempest. The wind was blowing its cord, Euroclydon. It's monstrous, really. And when neither sun nor stars in many days appeared, and no small tempest lay on us, all hope that we should be saved was then taken away. That's it. We're all in this ship. It looks like we're all going to die. All hope was taken away. All of those prisoners on there, all the crew, the captain, all facing now death in the face. We're all going to die. They've lost hope. What can we do to save this ship? We're going to now have to throw ourselves to the mercy of this storm. It's a ship we got in and we can't get out. But after long abstinence, Paul stood forth in the midst of them. Right, so Paul in this situation, and said, Sirs, ye should have hearkened unto me, and not have loosed from Crete, and to have gained this harm and loss. And now I exhort you to be of good cheer, for there shall be no loss of any man's life among you, but of the ship. Well, how on earth do you know that? For there stood by me, this is how he knew that. For there stood by me this night the angel of God, whose I am, and whom I serve, saying, Fear not, Paul. Thou must be brought before Caesar. And lo, God have given thee all them that sail with thee. So the ship's sinking, it's going to break up or whatever, they're going to all drown. But here's God sent an angel and telling him the contrary, that they're all going to be saved. So Paul, no doubt boldly speaking these words, because indeed an angel has appeared to him in the midst of this life-death situation. Now, often this is when these angels show up, when we're in life-death situations and we cry out with all of our heart, life and death being very much in the picture. Now, this is how the saints got all their miracles, when they cried out like their whole life depended upon it. Well, clearly, Paul's whole life depends upon the word of this angel. God sending him an angel to encourage him and to tell him to fear not. Clearly, he must have had a big trial going on here, and fear is very painful a lot of times. And when you're facing the gaping jaw of death, the deep abyss and pit of death and dying, you really do cry out to God with all of your heart. And so Paul did. God have given thee all of them. Don't forget this angel disappearing right in the midst of this storm. The ship is no doubt still being tossed about. And you pictured Paul going down into the lower deck, whatever it's called, the bow, whatever, right down there in the lower quarters of the ship. And this angel, you picture the ship being battered about by this storm. And Paul maybe even holding on to whatever he got to hold on to so he could stand up even, or lie down, whatever he was doing down there. And this angel appearing to him in the midst of this storm. The storm still going on all around him, the seas tossing and lashing at the ship, the winds blowing and howling, and the clouds up there dark and black. Can't even see the sun or the stars. And this angel appearing to Paul, telling him, don't fear not. That saying, fear not, Paul, thou must be brought before Caesar, as prophesied. And lo, God have given thee all of them that sail with thee. Wherefore, sirs, be of good cheer, for I believe God, that it shall be even as it was told me. Howbeit we must be cast upon a certain island. So he's kind of seen into the future now. But when the 14th night was come, as we were driven up and down in Adria, about midnight the shipmen deemed that they drew near to some country, and sounded and found it 20 fathoms, right? They measured the depth of the sea. And when they had gone a little further, they sounded again. They measured the depth of the sea, lowering the rate, whatever, and found it 15 fathoms. Then, fearing lest we should have fallen upon rocks, they cast forth anchors out of the stern, and wished for the day. And as the shipmen were about to flee out of the ship, so I'm getting out. I'm fleeing from the ship now. And as the shipmen were about to flee out of the ship, when they were let down the boat into the sea, they got into one of these lifeboats and figured they'd make it to the shore under colour as though they would have cast anchor out of the foreship. Paul said to the centurion and to the soldiers, except these abide in the ship, ye cannot be saved. They will drown. Talk to these men, stay here. Listen to the angel. The angel said, all of us will be saved. Stay with the ship. Stay with God. Stay with what God has said. If you think you're going to get into this lifeboat and row to the shore, forget it. You're going to die. Stay with me. Stay with God. Stay with the angel. And that is the only way I've been told you're going to be saved. Stand upon this word of God. Stand upon the word of this angel. And though it looks like we're all doomed, trust God. Then the soldiers cut off the ropes of the boat and let her fall off. And while the day was coming on, Paul besought them all to take meat, right? They hadn't even eaten, saying, this day is the 14th day that ye have tarried and continued fasting, having taken nothing. Wherefore I pray you to take some meat, for this is for your health. For there shall not an hair fall from the head of all, from any of you. And when he had thus spoken, he took bread and gave thanks to God in the presence of them all. And when he had broken it, he began to eat. Then were they all of good cheer, and they also took some meat. So Paul's words lifting them up. You're going to have to trust God for your life here now. You're going to have to trust that God indeed did send an angel to me. And this angel has said that every one of you will not perish if you listen to the voice of this angel and do exactly what God has said. Don't think of any other way out. Don't think of getting in some lifeboat and rowing to the shore, or you'll all be doomed. You're going to have to stay and stand upon the words of God, coming in via this angel that appeared to me. And when and we were in all the ship 260. That's 260 souls. That's 266 souls on that ship. And Paul is saying that not one of you is going to die. As long as you stick with me, don't look for any other way out. Stay with God. Stay with the voice of the angel. Trust in the voice of God coming in via this angel, and me passing on merely as a messenger, passing on what this angel has said. And when they had eaten enough, they lightened the ship and cast out the wheat into the sea. And when it was day, they knew not the land, but they discovered a certain creek with a shore, into the which they were minded, if it were possible, to thrust the ship. Let's just thrust the ship here. And when they had taken up the anchors, they committed themselves unto the sea. That's it. We'll take up the anchors. We're thrusting the ship into the shore. That's it. We're just left now to trust God. There's nothing else we can do but trust what God has said. Trust what this angel has said. Trust that Paul did indeed get a messenger from God standing before him, telling every one of us is going to survive. And when they had taken up the anchors, they committed themselves unto the sea. It's it. We're in. And loosed the rudder bands and hoisted up the mainsail to the wind and made toward shore. That's it. It's now or never. It's all or nothing. We're going to have to trust God completely. And falling into a place where two seas met, they ran the ship aground, and the forepart stuck fast, and remained unmovable. But the hinder part was broken with violence of the waves. There's no way back now. We all have to get off of this ship. There's no way to stay on it. We're going to have to trust God and throw ourselves to the sea. The front is now stuck and the back of the ship is breaking up. We're driven to the only decision left. There's no other way out. There's no, the doors open and shut. The prospect of staying on the ship. No, we're going to have to stick with Paul. We're going to have to swim now for our lives and follow St. Paul. And falling into a place where two seas met, they ran the ship aground, and the four parts stuck fast and remained unmovable. But the hinder part was broken with the violence of the waves. And the soldiers' counsel was to kill the prisoners. Let's kill all these prisoners. They're all going to escape, lest any of them should swim out and escape. But the centurion, willing to save Paul, kept them from their purpose, and commanded that they which could swim should cast themselves first into the sea and get to the land, and the rest, some on boards that couldn't swim, and some on broken pieces of the ship. Can't swim, get yourself a piece of the ship, hold on to that like a life raft, and swim with that. And so it came to pass that they escaped all safe to land. And when they escaped, then they knew that the island was called Melita. And the barbarous people showed us no little kindness, for they kindled a fire and received us every one because of the present rain and because of the cold. And when Paul had gathered a bundle of sticks and laid them on the fire, there came a viper out of the heat and fastened on Paul's hand. Well, after all that, he suddenly looks like he's going to be bitten by a viper. What did Jesus say? These signs shall follow them that believe. They shall take up serpents, and they shall not hurt them. If they drink any deadly thing, it won't harm them. And so here's Paul now, suddenly he's in his life again. And when Paul had gathered a bundle of sticks and laid them on the fire, there came a viper out of the heat and fastened on his hand. Right? He's got a serpent on his hand. It could just kill him now. And when the barbarians saw the venomous beast having hang on his hand, they said among themselves, no doubt this man is a murderer, whom though he had escaped the sea, yet vengeance suffereth not to live. Vengeance, he's going to die. This snake, this viper is going to bite him. And he shook off the beast into the fire and felt no harm. Howbeit they looked when he should have swollen or fallen down dead suddenly. But after they had looked a great while and saw no harm come to him, they changed their minds and said he was a god. So, God willing, we can take a lesson from all of this, that all these things happen unto them for examples and are written for our admonition, not only our admonition, but also for our encouragement, upon whom the ends of the world have come. So, praise Jesus.